Hi, good morning everyone. Here we are again for another informative webinar. Holidays are here, so it tends to get a little bit more difficult to stay on track, right? So our topic for today is planning a pre-op diet and preparing for surgery. Our presenter is a U.S. registered dietitian certified by the American Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics. She formerly served as the lead bariatric dietitian for the Ohio State University Medical Center, Ms. Caitlin Mock. So after her presentation, there will be a Q&A session where you will have the chance to ask questions. You can type them on the chat box found on your panels, as illustrated on the slide. If we don't have time to answer all questions, you may join our Facebook support group or go to our knowledge base section on our website. Okay, so without further ado, let me turn you over to our very charming and friendly speaker for today, Ms. Caitlin Mock.
Thank you, Hazel, and thanks everybody for joining us today. I'm going to pull up the different websites that we have. If you'd like to join our private Facebook group, here is the link for that, as well as the knowledge base section of the Mexico Bariatric Services page as well. Both are good resources. If you have any questions, if you'd like to learn more, if you want to talk to other patients, specifically the Facebook group is good for that. And the knowledge-based session is really a good area to just learn more about the surgery before and even after you've had surgery. So today we'll talk about preoperative diet, what this looks like, setting realistic weight loss goals, a food and activity journal. We'll talk a little bit more about this. If you were listening to previous webinars, we've also talked about the journal, but we'll get into it a little bit more today as well. And then my favorite topic for today is buying, storing, and organizing foods for success. Now, I will ask you to kind of bear with me. I had a nice head cold and sore throat that set in over the evening, so if you hear some coughing, I apologize. So the preoperative diet. The reason we really want people to kind of go on a diet or to eat healthier before surgery is because it's really important to get healthy before you go under the stress and the trauma that are really part of any major operation and not just a specific bariatric surgery. Losing a small amount of weight, research has shown, can really help decrease your risk of complications. And this is because it decreases the size of your liver. And by doing that, it actually can help make the surgery easier for your surgeon. Because as they go in with their different instruments, and typically, most people will have the surgery laparoscopic, which means they'll make several small incisions on your abdomen instead of making one large one. And so part of that, to do that surgery, whether it is open or laparoscopic, they have to kind of pull your liver back. And if you've eaten really high-fat meals and haven't lost any weight, your liver tends to be very large, and this can make it much more difficult for your surgeon to perform the operation. So the basics of a preoperative diet, we typically say to recommend starting about 2 to 6 weeks before surgery. However, even 3 to 7 days before can be beneficial. You'll want to focus on including lean proteins. So this can be grilled or baked meats, things like fish, tofu, having reduced fat cheese and yogurt, cottage cheese and eggs, including more non-starchy vegetables into your diet, so having at least 1 to 2 servings of these non-starchy vegetables at lunch or dinner, and then maybe as a snack in the day as well. So the non-starchy vegetables are really kind of everything but your corn, potatoes, peas, and winter squash like an acorn or butternut. Now the starchy vegetables are still healthy, they still have beneficial nutrients, they just tend to have more calories than your non-starchy vegetables. And so preoperatively, while we're really trying to reduce your calories before surgery, you just want to make sure that you don't overdo it on these starchy vegetables. So we really want you to focus on more of those non-starchy ones. You can have a small serving of the starchy vegetables or different whole grains. So a small serving would be about 1/2 cup cooked. So if you think about 1/2 cup of whole wheat pasta or 1/2 cup of a baked potato or 1 ear of corn or corn on the cob, Those are all examples of what a small serving of starch would be at a meal pre-op. The other part of this is to try to think of those non-starchy vegetables as being the main entree at your meal, as opposed to how we typically think of them as being the side dish. You'll also want to limit your sweets and snack foods and regular sodas, kind of those crispy, crunchy carbs that just tend to give us a lot of calories but don't give us a lot of good vitamins or minerals and fiber. And then I think the most important thing is to really try to avoid that Last Supper mentality. So this is when, people before surgery kind of start to get into a little bit of a panic mode, that they're never going to be able to eat some of these, favorite foods or these higher fat, calorie, or sweet foods. And it's simply not true. Some people do have intolerances to certain foods, and they may last, weeks to months and maybe even a couple of years. But after surgery, you tend not to crave a lot of those favorite foods the same way that you did before surgery. And so, really trying to limit that Last Supper idea of, going out to your favorite restaurants or kind of feeling like you're never going to eat again, because I promise it's not true. You will. And this is one activity that gets a lot of people into trouble before surgery. And it kind of goes back to that enlarged liver, and that they gain weight before surgery because of this kind of thinking that they're never going to be able to eat again. So this is an example of what that diet may look like. You may have 1 to 2 scrambled eggs in the morning with a slice of toast. Really adding, good vegetables like some onions, peppers, spinach, mushrooms, tomatoes, whatever you like, is a nice, easy way to get some of those extra non-starchy vegetables in. At snack time, focus on having your fresh fruits. At lunch, once again, including a lot of fresh vegetables. So if you have a taco salad, using a lot of romaine lettuce or some other kind of dark leafy green, maybe like a spinach or endive. Adding some onions, peppers, tomatoes. You can use a lean protein like ground turkey. You might even use a seasoned tofu or a black bean, pinto bean mix for your protein source if you're a vegetarian. You can sprinkle a little bit of cheese on that and make your own taco ranch dressing. I really like it when you can make your own dressings or sauces, because you can control what's in them a little bit more, which is, I think, really important for kind of long-term weight control and just kind of being aware of what you're eating and what's in the food that you're eating. And then throw a little bit of those tortilla chips on top. Some of those crispy, crunchy carbs are okay just for that extra little mouthfeel and to be a little bit more satisfied. Again, at snack times, focusing on those fruits. Maybe you'll have some applesauce or a little bit of a light fruit cocktail. And then again at dinner, focusing on those vegetables, having a nice salad, maybe some steamed green beans, a small piece of fish, and some steamed rice. And then at snack time, especially I think in the evenings, we tend to want a little bit more satisfying snack, or this is when a lot of us have that sweet tooth. And the frozen fruit, I've found, has really helped people to be a little bit more satisfied with those evening snack times. One of our favorite things to do at home is slice bananas and then just sprinkle a little bit of cinnamon on top and put it in the freezer. And this is a really good, yummy, satisfying snack. Another diet that you may go on about a couple of days before surgery, anywhere from 2 to 3 days, is a full liquid diet. Now, some surgeons do encourage this, some do not, so definitely talk to your surgeon about what they recommend. A full liquid diet consists of things like milk, diluted juice, and diluted juice is typically 1 part juice to 3 parts water, if you have kind of a question on that. Decaf teas, coffees, popsicles, gelatin, they're jellos, sugar-free typically. You can also have smoothies, yogurt, no sugar added, breakfast drinks, cottage cheese, puddings, broth, and low-fat cream soups. You'll also want to really focus on, again, choosing those low-fat versions or reduced fat, as well as the no sugar added or sugar-free. And then typically 1 day before surgery, your surgeon will have you do a clear liquid diet. So this is basically all items that are translucent. So your diluted juice, the jellos, vegetable broths or chicken broth, sugar-free popsicles. If you have diabetes, you'll really want to be careful with this diet, and once again, work with your physician closely to make sure that you don't have a hypoglycemic event where your blood sugar is going too low. So you might have to have a little bit more regular Jell-O or a regular popsicle compared to the sugar-free to make sure that your blood sugar is stable and in a healthy range. So post-operatively, once again, we go back to that full liquid diet, but this time you'll want to be really cautious to make sure that you're straining everything. This is particularly important with like a cream soup or a smoothie. If you're having bits of fruit in that smoothie, you don't want to have any chunks or seeds like strawberry or raspberry seeds. Typically, most people can do a quarter to a half of a cup. Maximum is really the half cup serving. So below, you'll see we started with the instant breakfast drink, a half a cup, and then a half a cup of a protein drink mid-morning as a snack, a half a cup of Greek yogurt at lunchtime, and then back to that protein drink in the afternoon. Once again, these half cup portions are really a maximum. Most people will not be able to do that much at every single meal. All right, next, setting realistic weight loss goals. So the way that we determine this medically is a little bit different than what your specific weight loss goal may be. So we start off with determining what your ideal body weight is. All right, then if you're a man, we say for every inch that you are above 5 feet, we add 6 pounds. And so for those first 5 feet, we give you 106 pounds. So if you're a man and you're 5'10", your ideal body weight would be 166 pounds. So that means 106 pounds for those first 5 feet, and then we take 6 pounds and multiply that by 10 to get 166 pounds for what your ideal weight is. And then we kind of can take a range of that from plus or minus 10%. So maybe 149 to 183 pounds was what we would consider to be your ideal weight. For women, it's a little bit different. We say 100 pounds for the first 5 feet, and then 5 pounds for every inch after that. So to determine what your excess body weight is, we take whatever your current body weight and then subtract what that ideal body weight is. And that's your excess body weight. Now, average weight loss, if you are going to have the gastric bypass, you would lose about 70% of that excess weight. If you have a sleeve gastrectomy, you can expect to lose about 60%. And with the gastric band, it's about 50%. So if you're a 300-pound man and your ideal body weight is 166 pounds, you would subtract 166 from the 300 to get 134 pounds. That is the excess body weight that you have. You then take that 134 pounds and multiply it by 60% to get what you would be expected to lose from having the surgery. Now that's if we would use the example of a sleeve gastrectomy. That comes up to about 80 pounds. So you then subtract the 300 or the 80 from the 300 to get an estimated weight loss goal of about 220 pounds. Again, this is an average. Some people will lose more and some people will lose less. It's important to set some smaller goals along the way. You might want to start off with saying that you'll only expect to be down, or you want to have a goal of being down about 15 pounds at 2 months. Most of you will probably exceed this, but thinking small can help to make sure that you hit those goals along the way to stay motivated. Maybe you'll also want to set a goal that doesn't have anything to do with a specific number, but maybe an activity, such as, at 6 months, I'd really like to be able to go to the grocery store without getting winded or feeling uncomfortable as I'm walking around. These are all important goals to set and important things to think about as you go through this process of losing weight. I can't tell you how many patients I've had that wanted to get down to a certain weight, and that's all that they could think about before surgery was once they were at that weight, they would be happy. But then maybe 20 or 30 pounds before they got to that goal weight, they decided that they were happy and they didn't want to lose too much weight because they were afraid that they would look too thin, or they felt like where they were at that point was good for them and they felt healthy and happy. So just be prepared to kind of ebb and flow with what your weight loss goals may be. Being flexible is really important to surgery and to kind of your general success. Another important thing to think about when you're setting these weight loss goals is to remember that a lot of that weight that you lose initially is from the glycogen that's being broken down in your liver. Now, some of you that may have listened to our previous webinar, we talked about glycogen and how it's a storage form of energy that's in your liver. And as you go on a diet, or as if you've had surgery and your body relies on those energy storage that you have in your body, this glycogen gets broken down. And part of the glycogen is a water molecule. So as you lose a lot of weight, you actually lose a lot of water from this molecule being broken down. And so that's why those first few weeks after a diet that you've gone on or after surgery, you tend to lose a lot of weight. And then as the weeks go on, this slows down. And that's because that water weight is also slowing down. And so that's typically when a lot of people get frustrated about a diet and they don't think it's working or they don't think their surgery is working. But this is actually when you tend to have a lot of that really good weight loss happening. So just keep this in mind as you go through the whole process. Some other things to remember: 1 pound of fat is equal to 3,500 calories. So this is actually more than what most people need all day long. So it should take a while to lose a 1 pound of weight typically, especially if you're before surgery or if you're maybe a few years after surgery and that weight loss is really kind of slowed or stopped. If you're trying to lose weight again, it will take time to kind of reach this goal. So if you have a combination of cutting your calories and increasing your energy expenditure so that you have a deficit of 500 calories per day, this will lead to about a weight loss of about 1 pound per week, because 500 calories times 7, because there's 7 days in a week, equals the 3,500 calories. So I think this is a really good thing to keep in mind. It can be extremely frustrating to realize that 1 pound per week of weight loss is really good. But if you think about how long it maybe took you to gain weight initially, it makes sense. It takes a little bit longer to take it off and a little bit more energy as well. And this is usually when I get the most excited, is when your weight loss does tend to slow a little bit, because once again, it's those gradual lifestyle changes that really tend to help keep that weight loss off. The weight that you lose the first few weeks after surgery that kind of tends to fall off, or when you go on a new diet and you lose 5 pounds in a week or so, those typically aren't things that you can do forever. So the lifestyle changes that come along with slower weight loss are really a good thing. All right, now we'll switch gears to journaling a little bit. I really like the journal to kind of be a representative of the person. This is just an example of what I would typically use in a journal. Yours might look a lot different, and that's completely fine. But just some typical things that you do want to include in a journal are, what you're eating, what time you're eating, and about how much you're eating. So putting portion sizes down is really important. This is especially good after surgery when you're more sensitive to those portion sizes. You can kind of keep track of what foods are setting well, what foods aren't. Maybe you'll notice if you ate something too quickly that it was difficult to tolerate versus something that was slower. Also writing down maybe things that you need to do that day is fine. If you have a to-do list or a grocery list, you can write down. Also, feelings or emotions are nice to have in your journal, especially as it relates to food. So that if you look at that 10:45 time, if you're feeling tired or bored at work, and this is typically when you would want maybe some kind of sugar or candy or a snack, you can write that down. And so maybe you do have those 10 M&Ms, or maybe you don't have them, but that's what you're craving. If you write these things down, you can maybe try to kind of plan your snacks or your coffee or your tea, whatever, around that time when maybe you do feel a little bit of a lull in the day. So really, once again, making the food journal your own. Write down your thoughts, your emotions, maybe a grocery list. If you're going through the day and you suddenly think of a new goal that you have, write that down. It's really important. Research shows that when you write something down that's in your mind or that you're learning, and you commit it to that piece of paper, you're more likely to remember it if it's something like a grocery list, or maybe emotions that you had when you were eating something. Also goals, if you write them down, you're more likely to reach those goals than if you don't write them down, which I think is a very fascinating thing to talk about or to think about. Also, once again, like we said before, writing down those portion sizes, foods that didn't sit well, and again, how quickly you ate. I found that a lot of patients that are further out from surgery that are still having a hard time tolerating foods are eating too quickly, and they don't realize it because they still feel like they're eating so much slower than what they were before surgery. But you have to realize your body is still adjusting, and you have to take time to really allow your body to process that food, to digest that food, and to really settle in and kind of get used to where your fullness factor is. Now, journaling, I think, is really most helpful before surgery for a couple of months, and those first couple of months after surgery when everything is so new and you're trying all these new foods for the first time. And then for 1 to 2 weeks at various times later post-op. So maybe 6 months out, or a year out, or 5 years out, the journal can kind of help redirect you and get you focused again. I definitely don't want anyone to obsess over it or feel like you have to take it everywhere you go, especially as the holiday season approaches. You don't have to take it to your company, Christmas party and write down everything. The goal is really just to become more aware of what you're eating, how you're eating, whether it's fast, slow, if you're happy when you're eating, sad when you're eating, kind of what your food habits are. And then once you determine those things, how you can kind of make positive changes in the future to be more healthy using what you've learned from your food journal. All right, so this is my favorite topic for today. I'll talk about buying foods, storing food in your house, and we'll really focus on your pantry and your refrigerator and freezer, and then organizing foods so that you can be the most successful after surgery. So let's start off with just planning your meals. I typically recommend making a list of meals that you think you'll eat over the next 3 to 4 days. Typically, if you shop for an entire week all at once, it's just too much food, especially after surgery. What we expect to eat is much smaller than or much larger than what we can actually eat. So if you shop for the whole week, you'll typically end up with just a lot of food that goes bad. So really try to focus on not overfilling your refrigerator. Now, during the week, you can gather different recipes if needed. I really like to look online in different magazines. I get a couple different cooking magazines, or look in cookbooks that you have, they're kind of around the house. And then another thing to do is to avoid grocery shopping the same day that you do your meal planning. This is something I swear by. It really helps keep your meals fresh and kind of separates it so that you don't feel like all you're doing in one day is cooking and shopping and preparing and thinking about food. Having that separate day really does help to kind of keep it fresh and exciting for yourself. So we'll get into kind of the grocery list for the first several weeks post-op. This is when you'll want to focus on having full liquids and pureed or blended foods. So I always separate everything into the different areas of the grocery store. So first, we'll talk about fresh produce. This is usually one of the first things that you see when you walk into the grocery store. You kind of walk into the produce section. So some foods that typically sit well those first few weeks are bananas. Once again, all of these foods need to be liquid or blended items. So bananas typically go really well in a protein drink or a smoothie. Onions and mushrooms can be steamed and added to different fruits or to different soups, if you have a immersion blender or just a regular blender as well. And then your different squashes, like your winter squash, such as acorn or butternut, again, because they have such a meaty texture, these can be blended really easily into other soups as well. Next, we'll talk about the dairy aisle. Having yogurt, milk, a small curd cottage cheese is important. The large curd tends to be a little bit more difficult to tolerate. Shredded cheese, and then eggs. Your meats, again, are a difficult item a lot of times for people. You'll make sure these are blended and very soft and moist. Usually having some kind of sauce or a broth is important with the meat. Fish, if you like fish, is one of the best meats to kind of start with because it tends to be very soft and tender and flaky to begin with, that you really only need to mash it with your fork. And so that's also really important when you have that plate of blended food. If you just have a fish that you've mashed, it tends to be a little bit more appetizing than, say, a blended chicken breast or something. And then different grains and starches that you can do include a cream of wheat or cream of rice cereal, baby oatmeal, and then mashed potatoes or sweet potatoes. With the grains and starches, you want to make sure that these are very kind of soupy. Once again, these are all things that should be more of a liquid. So your cereals, like your oatmeal, your cream of wheat, cream of rice, you don't want these to be thick. They should be a little bit of a soupy, kind of watered down hot cereal. Foods in the aisles. Unsweetened applesauce is really popular. Tomato or vegetable juice. Look for the low sodium varieties of these. A creamy nut butter, like a creamy peanut butter or almond butter, is really popular. I have a lot of patients that will add a tablespoon of the nut butter to a protein drink. Another good thing that you can do is take a tablespoon and put it in the microwave for about 5 seconds or so, 10 seconds, and then add that tablespoon of softened nut butter to a half cup of a plain Greek yogurt. And it really adds an extra bit of flavor and kind of a smoothness and creaminess to the yogurt that's nice. And then your no sugar added breakfast drink packets are another thing that's frequently found in the aisle. Some canned foods to have at home include some low-fat cream soups. Remember to strain those. Ready-made broths like chicken, vegetable broth. Fat-free refried beans are really nice, especially if you have a little bit of a sweet tooth intolerance. If the sweet things just do not sit well, the refried beans are really nice to have. And then canned chicken and canned tuna, you can typically mash these with a fork. These you'll also want to make sure that you have something moist to mix them with. I always recommend avocado because it tends to be a little bit more heart healthy than the Miracle Whip or mayonnaise, and it's got a really good light texture and taste. If you can get past the green color, it does sit really well. And like I said, it's much more heart healthy item than the mayonnaise or the Miracle Whip. Some miscellaneous items to have at home. Some Crystal Light or a different, off-brand version is fine, whatever you like. But some kind of sugar-free drink packet that you can add to just plain water to make your water a little bit more exciting. The no sugar added breakfast drinks. These can be different kinds of aisles, so I put that in a couple different spots. And then your sugar-free popsicles and sugar-free puddings, and then having some meal replacement drinks as well, like an Ensure or Boost. I don't typically recommend buying a lot of these things in bulk. Having a few different items at home that you can try after surgery is nice to at least get you started, because a lot of times what you like before surgery is not necessarily what you'll like after surgery. So again, really try to avoid buying Ensure in a case of 24 because you might hate it after surgery. Same thing with the no sugar added breakfast drinks. Maybe just buy one box of it, see how it's tolerated, and if you like it, you can always go back and get more. All right, when you're later after surgery, so about 6 weeks to 8 weeks, you'll start to have more of your whole foods again. So a lot of you will still want to limit your raw fruits and vegetables because they'll be a little bit more difficult to tolerate. But some of these things you can still buy and steam them or cook them really well. So I always recommend making sure that you have some healthy, convenient foods on hand at home that can really be easily prepared during the week when you're short on time or you just don't have a lot of energy. And that can include things like, pre-cut and washed broccoli or a lettuce. A cottage cheese is a great quick meal in a hurry. A frozen turkey burger, you might only be able to eat half the burger, but again, it's something that you can just kind of throw in the toaster oven or the microwave, and it'll be ready in a few minutes. And then some low sodium soups are really nice as well to have at home. Also thinking of some favorite kind of go-to meals that are easy to prepare on busy nights. I've made a list of just some quick ones that we typically have at our house. This can include a vegetable omelet. So, cleaning out your veggie drawer, seeing what you have on hand. Almost everyone has part of an onion. You might have some spinach leaves that are maybe starting to wilt a little bit, but they're not bad yet. So you can chop those up and add them in. Maybe you have a tomato that you need to get rid of. Your cheese drawer, we always tend to have, 3 or 4 cheeses that are, almost gone. So this is an easy way that I tend to kind of clear out my cheese drawer and to see what I have. And if I have a cheese that we need to use up, we'll throw it in an omelet, and it's usually delicious. Some other things that are really easy, quick meals, spaghetti with frozen turkey meatballs. You can add some frozen chopped spinach to the marinara sauce to get a little bit more vegetables, which is nice. And the frozen chopped spinach is something that it has a really mild flavor, especially when you mix it into something that's a little bit stronger tasting, like a marinara sauce. But it does give you a really good vegetable serving in a really quick and easy way. Now, for those of you that may be a little bit intolerant to pasta, try the spaghetti squash for the noodles instead of your regular pasta noodles. If you're not sure what I'm talking about, after we're done with this, I would recommend going to like a YouTube or Google and just typing in spaghetti squash for noodles, and you'll be amazed. This is a really great way to get a lower calorie, lower carbohydrate pasta, and you get a little bit of a vegetable serving as well. And then stir fries. This is actually something that we did in our house last night when we were short on time. I almost always have some kind of frozen vegetable in the freezer, and then you can get those frozen grilled chicken breasts that are already diced up. Throw it in your wok, or if you have a steamer basket, and then add your favorite marinade or sauce. And again, this is a good, quick, easy meal and things that you can just have at home that don't take a lot of time and effort. All right, the grocery list. You want to have things separated into the different sections of the grocery store once again. Whether you're a week out from surgery or 6 months out from surgery, having it separated is really important so that you're not finding yourself going from one end of the store to the other and back again. I also like to have a little space at the top of my grocery list where I can add, where I can write down a meal that I want to make that week. So I might think on Tuesday afternoon that, I want to have, a chicken broccoli casserole later in the week. So at the top of my list, I'll write down chicken broccoli casserole, and then I'll take each of those ingredients that I know I need to buy, and I'll write them down in the different areas of the grocery store that I need to go so that I know that recipe is taken care of on my list. And this is a nice, easy way to do it. It helps keep you organized. That way you don't have to try to remember later in the day what you were going to make for the week. It really does help a lot. And then having kind of some grocery list must-haves. This is just some of the things that I like to have at home. We almost always have, spinach or some type of other green leafy vegetable like a romaine or an endive lettuce. Onions and bell peppers are great because they can last a long time, and you can use them in casseroles, in eggs, on salads. Again, eggs are a big thing at our house. You can use them just for scrambled eggs. You can have a frittata. You can make an egg casserole. You can do an egg salad. They're really versatile and a good protein choice. different cheese that you like that you can add to, once again, salads or casseroles or soups. Fresh fruit, this is usually one that I just look at seasonally. Right now we have a lot of clementines and grapefruits because it's the winter. In the summer you may have peaches on your list or strawberries, and then frozen fruits as well for a nice sweet treat. So storing food. Excuse me. It's really important to look at your fridge, and I have found when I kind of make this statement to people, does your fridge look like the apocalypse is coming? A lot of people will end up laughing because it does. Their fridge is stockpiled with everything they can imagine. There's condiments that they haven't used in years. There's things in the back that's starting to grow, fuzzy stuff on it. Really look at your fridge and see what you can get rid of, what you're not using, what's expired, and toss it. Leave room so that you can see what is in your fridge, and this will really help prevent your food from spoiling, and it'll actually save you money because you won't be tossing all this extra food away. So to do this, you'll want to invest in some good storage containers of some kind. I really like to have a combination of glass and like your typical kind of plastic Tupperware. I think it's really important to have the clear Tupperware. Usually your glass is going to be clear no matter what, but the clear Tupperware is really beneficial so you can actually see what's in the container. I don't know how many times growing up, we would have leftover casserole in a cottage cheese container that you couldn't see what was in it. And then after a couple days, you would forget that was leftover casserole and not cottage cheese. And then you'd look at it maybe a week or so later and it had already gone bad. So having those clear containers is really important. And then buying a variety of sizes, especially after surgery, you'll notice that the small containers are very beneficial because you're only eating, a quarter to a half of a cup. So what might have been a leftover before that you would just toss could now be a meal for the next day. All right, storing food. You can really store, any leftovers that you have. I'm choosing to focus on meat here because I think this is a common one, especially after surgery. It tends to be a little bit more difficult to tolerate meat initially. And meat can be expensive, so it's something that you don't want to toss if you don't have to. So if you find yourself having a lot of extra servings of meat, what you can do is chop it into a desired size. I like to think of having the fajita strip size. You could also dice it smaller depending on what you think you'll use the meat for. You'll then want to wrap it in plastic wrap and then put it in a freezer bag. This double protection really helps prevent that freezer burn that we typically see on foods that have been in the freezer for a little bit. And then you can write with a permanent marker the date and then what's inside, because as food is in the freezer and maybe it gets pushed back to the freezer, we forget what something may be a week or a month down the road. And then especially with meat, this is a great thing to add later to different salads, stir fries, or even maybe a vegetable soup to get a little bit more protein. Some other things that you can do when you're storing your food to just kind of help save on time is washing and cutting up vegetables. Again, I'll get out my containers and I'll have them ready to go, and we'll chop broccoli, or cauliflower, carrots, peppers, put them into their individual containers, and then use it for different things during the week, like a salad, omelets. A big thing that I like to have at home is some hummus. And so instead of coming home and opening a bag of potato chips, I'll just pull out the broccoli and the carrots because I know it's quick, it's easy, it's already cut up, and it's a nice healthy snack. And it gives me a little bit of that crunch that I want, but it gives me good vitamins and minerals compared to, once again, the potato chips that just give you a lot of fat and calories. Another thing you can do while you're cutting up all those vegetables is maybe boil some eggs for a quick snack or a breakfast item when you're in a hurry the next morning. With occasional foods, so this is a good idea with those kind of crispy, crunchy carbs that you have that you really want to eat just in moderation. Grab your bag of whatever it is. I'll use kind of crackers as an example in this case. You can sit in front of the TV while you're doing this. Have your plastic sandwich bags or another storage container If it's something like a dried fruit or nuts, you might want to grab a tablespoon measure or maybe a quarter cup measure. And then you can literally sit there and watch television and count out a single serving of whatever you're having. So if it's the crackers, a serving is typically going to be 1 ounce, or maybe it'll say 8 crackers. So you can physically count out those 8 crackers, put them in that plastic Ziploc bag, seal it, and then put it to the side, and then do it all over again. And before you know it, while you're watching your favorite show, you're going to have, maybe 10 to 16 small bags or containers of whatever that snack food is ready to go. So that the next time you have it, instead of pulling out the whole box of crackers and being tempted to maybe eat more than a serving, you don't have to think about it. It's already there for you in a very easy, contained portion size. All right, on to organizing. So the refrigerator is a really important area to organize. It's already kind of separated into sections, but the more people that you have in your home, I've found the more children that you have in your home, or sometimes husbands, things that you think should go in a certain area tend to kind of end up all over the fridge. So really trying to designate specific areas in your fridge to put different categories of food. So meat, you either want to put this in the bottom drawer, or if there's a separate drawer, so there's usually a meat drawer in the middle of your fridge that's completely self-contained, you'll want to put your meat in there, because meat is something that the juices can potentially drain onto other foods, specifically your fruits and vegetables, and this is what can maybe cross-contaminate and lead to sicknesses or illnesses, because those germs, those bacteria, migrate onto other foods and can get people sick. Also, having separate drawers for vegetables and fruit. You remember, after surgery, especially the further you get out from surgery, your vegetables and your fruits should really be the mainstay of your diet. So you want to have a specific area to put a lot of these foods in, so that you know what you have and that you don't let it go bad. And then having an area for your lean proteins, like your lunch meats, your cheeses, your yogurts, and then putting milk and juice on top. That's typically where they sit best. And then this gives you plenty of room for different leftovers, so that you can actually see what you have in your fridge. Once again, I recommend at least once a month if you can, or once a quarter, kind of depending on how full your fridge is. Go through it, look and see what items have gone bad, what condiments you're not eating. Maybe you bought a fish sauce for a recipe and you've only used it once and it's been sitting in there for the last year and a half. Go ahead and toss it if you don't think you're going to use it again. There's no reason to kind of have all of these things on hand that are just taking up space. And this really helps so that you eat the food that you have before you go out and buy more. Most of us live within a few miles of the grocery store, unless you're in rural Montana or rural Alaska, where you can only get to a grocery store about once a week. Most of us go a few times. So there's no reason that you have to have that fridge jam-packed with different foods. The pantry is probably my favorite area to organize for my type A personality. And it's something that I've found needs reorganized about once a month or more. I hope your house isn't like mine, but mine gets pretty messy really quickly. So trying to declutter your pantry, toss out expired items or items that you don't eat. If it's a canned food or something that hasn't been opened and it hasn't expired yet, see if you can donate it to a local food pantry. Again, investing in some kind of clear, airtight container can be nice for different dry goods like pastas, rice, oatmeal, beans and grains. Separate your pantry so that the boxed items like cereals, crackers, and breakfast bars are in one area. I'm a big proponent of having wire or kind of like a mesh basket that you can throw all your spices into. And then something new that we've tried in our house over the last few months is having a little basket that you put specific foods that you use for one meal. So literally, I went to Target a few months ago, and they happened to have these cute little mesh baskets that were $1 a piece in that little dollar section they always have at the front of the store. And I bought 3 of them. And so for taco night, I put all of our taco ingredients that are kind of the dry items in that mesh basket. So I have green chilies in there, I have black beans, I have my packets of taco seasoning, so that when I have tacos or when I make tacos, I know if I've used my last bag of taco seasoning or if I need to get more pinto beans next time, which is really nice. It also makes it super easy for those nights when I don't really want to take a lot of time to cook. I know that I have that basket that I can turn to make a quick meal. Some other things you can do that are more surgery specific, having maybe a basket or a little bag for protein bars or protein powders or your sugar-free drink mixes like Crystal Light or your different teas. And this is nice because it's kind of your section of the pantry that's only for you. So it's an easy area for you to go to so you're not tempted by maybe some of the other foods that could be lingering in your pantry area. All right, we'll talk about next some different meal prep strategies that you can do before surgery to prepare yourself for after surgery. One of my big recommendations for people that like to cook at home is to start off with making some different kinds of soups. And you'll want to focus on more of your bisque style soup, and that is a soup that's a very smooth, creamy. It doesn't have chunks of any kind of food in it, so it's all blended potatoes or tomatoes or mushrooms, whatever the kind of style bisque is that you're having. You can also do homemade popsicles. This is really yummy, and you can get pretty creative at home with different combinations of fruits and vegetable juices. And then also trying to do different casseroles. So this is something that you can just make a meal before surgery, and then any leftovers that you have, either blend it or maybe chop it really fine and put it in those single serving containers, and then you can add extra maybe cream soup or extra sauce after surgery when you're having that meal. And so it's a really nice, easy way to kind of prepare yourself for after surgery, because those first few weeks after surgery, you're a little bit sore. You maybe don't have as much energy to get up and make a big fancy pot of soup. So anything that you can do before surgery is really beneficial. Some other general tips to have on hand, in the inside of your pantry drawer or maybe on the fridge, keeping a list of things that maybe you have to buy more of. So specifically, this is good with your pantry items like different cereals or oatmeal or maybe your canned foods that, you know, when I have a low-fat mushroom cream of soup that goes on sale, I usually will buy, 5 or 10 cans of it so that when I run out, I'm not always aware of it. So as soon as you run out, you can write that on your grocery list so that you know, hey, the next time that goes on sale, I need to stock up. Also looking to see what's in your fridge, your freezer, your pantry, and trying to use up the food that you have before you go and buy new foods. So this might involve looking up new recipes to see how you can use some of the things that you already have at home before it does go bad. And then I really recommend trying to avoid having that junk drawer. Keep 1 to 3 occasional foods that you have at home that you know you can really be cautious with and eat the appropriate portion size, and then get rid of the rest. There's no reason that we need to have an entire area of our kitchen separate for that kind of junky type food. Some other things to do to talk to your surgeon about before surgery are alcohol. Typically we recommend to avoid it 1 day before surgery. Now, if you are a regular drinker, whether it's moderate, responsible, that's fine. But do kind of keep in mind that alcohol is high in calories. It has 7 calories per gram, whereas your fat has 9 calories per gram, and your proteins and carbohydrates only have 4. So alcohol really does have more calories than most foods. Smoking is another thing to pay attention to. Most physicians that I have worked with like people to quit smoking 6 months to a year before surgery. And this is really because smoking significantly, I want to stress that again, increases your risk of complications. So the quickest possible time frame you can use to quit is really, really important. And to make sure that you continue to not smoke after surgery. If you go right back to smoking within those first 6 months, you're at a much higher risk for ulcers, gastric ulcers, as well as potential leaks and difficulty healing from your surgery or maybe other surgeries that you'll have in the future. And that's also really important to try to exercise before surgery. At least 20 minutes of a light to moderate aerobic and resistance activity 3 to 4 days a week. If you're already doing this and you're doing more, that's typically fine. I found very few surgeons say to cut back on your exercise. So if you're doing more, go ahead and keep doing it. If you're not doing anything, maybe try to really focus on getting to at least this 20 minutes several times a week. All right, so that leads us to the end of the presentation. I know we went a little bit over today. Once again, I want to stress the importance of joining our private Facebook support group. We post something almost every day about surgery in one form or another. It's also a really good place to connect with other people that have had surgery or maybe going through the process of trying to get to surgery. You can ask questions, maybe talk about good things that have happened to you, things that have been difficult. And then also the bookmark knowledge base page of the Mexico Bariatric Services section has really good information for before surgery and after surgery as well. All right, with that, I will turn it back over to Hazel. I'm going to go ahead and go to some of my questions that I have here. So it looks like someone's asked, what do I do when I feel hungry between meals on the pre-op diet? So an important thing to do if you're hungry or if you're kind of getting that feeling of just wanting to snack before surgery is really focus on getting enough fluids. Oftentimes when we think we're hungry, we're actually really thirsty. So maybe having a large glass of water, having a Crystal Light packet around that you can add to some water, or maybe some decaf tea can really help to kind of curb that craving or that hunger signal. And if that doesn't work and you're still hungry afterwards, what you can do is have some extra snacks on hand. And this is where I really like to focus on getting those non-starchy vegetables. So maybe some cucumbers, some carrots, celery, cauliflower, and some kind of low-fat dip like a hummus or maybe a ranch dip of some kind. And that's because these foods tend to have a lot of fiber and they really help to fill you up without giving you a lot of calories or a lot of fat. And they also have a lot of good vitamins and minerals and antioxidants. Some other things you can have are like a clementine orange or maybe some banana. Also maybe having sugar-free gum or a peppermint just to kind of cleanse your palate can also help to kind of curb that hunger signal. All right, let's see. There's one other question. All right, is it okay to drink regular coffee before surgery? Now, yes, it is completely fine to have regular coffee. The issue with caffeine and specifically coffee or regular teas is that they tend to have a diuretic effect. And so specifically after surgery, if you drink a lot of caffeinated beverages, you're losing a lot of those fluids because you have to urinate more from drinking that. Now, you might not think you're one of those people that gets affected by this, but basically everybody does, so you really do have to watch it. Now, before surgery, if you're having 8 to 16 ounces of a coffee beverage per day, that's typically fine. And so, 8 to 16 ounces is about 1 to 2 cups. Now, after surgery, once again, it is really important to limit those caffeinated beverages. I really encourage people to limit the caffeine till at least they're 2 to 3 months out from surgery. All right. Should I take a multivitamin before surgery? And what about calcium and B12? Okay, so before surgery, it's not mandatory to take a vitamin of some kind. I generally do think it's nice to take some kind of multivitamin. This can be a chewable, or just a regular vitamin as well. A lot of people do the Centrum Completes or a Centrum Silver. Whatever you like is fine. It's not going to hurt you. As far as the calcium and the B12, if you're not a big dairy person or you don't get enough calcium already, I do think it is important to take a calcium supplement. Most people want to aim for at least 1,500 milligrams daily between diets and supplement. So what that means is if you have like 1 cup of milk, for example, is 300 milligrams of calcium. A string cheese is about 200 milligrams of calcium. So that's really only like a fifth of what you need all day long. So if you're not getting in a lot of high calcium foods, or if you're questioning it, then you probably do need a little bit of a calcium supplement. As far as the B12, you really don't need to take a B12 supplement unless you're a strict vegan, meaning that you don't eat any meat or any animal byproducts, such as like a milk or cheese or eggs. Those are the people that really need a B12 supplement before surgery. If you are a meat eater or you're a vegetarian but you do eat some animal byproducts, you typically do not need any kind of B12 beforehand. All right. Oh, this is a good question. All right. How can you elaborate more on how to make vegetables the main dish at a meal? So yeah, this is a good question, a little bit confusing. So you kind of have to think outside of the box on this one, especially if you're a typical or a traditional kind of meat and potatoes person, which I am a German farm girl. I completely understand this. In my house growing up, it was meat and potatoes at a meal and maybe a small serving of some kind of vegetable. So this is something that I've really had to kind of teach myself as a dietitian and as I've tried to eat healthier, especially as I've gotten older. So what you'll do is, instead of thinking of maybe having a steak at a meal, think of what kind of vegetable that you could have that would sort of, mimic that kind of flavor. And so we like to have a lot of grilled portobello mushrooms in our house. So instead of having a steak or maybe a sandwich or a burger, we'll grill or saute some portobello mushrooms and make a sandwich with that instead of the traditional beef that we would use beforehand. Mushrooms have a really good meaty and complex flavor, which is nice. It's an easy way to kind of take that substitution for the meat. Something else that you can do is think of like a stuffed bell pepper. In our house before, it used to be stuffed with meat and some kind of rice, or like a sausage and a rice. Well, now I'll take a bell pepper and I'll stuff it with, quinoa or brown rice, and I'll saute mushrooms and onions and peppers, and I'll throw all sorts of different seasonings and herbs in there. So I have a really good, flavorful dish, but there's actually no meat in it at all. Another thing you can do is think of a chili, but make a vegetable chili instead of your traditional, beef chili, or maybe a vegetable frittata instead of a regular kind of egg and sausage dish or something. So really, I recommend, try to go to Google and just type in a vegetable main dish, and you will get all sorts of different recipes that will come up, and you can kind of, click through them, see what sounds good. If you hate broccoli, obviously don't make that one of your main dish options, but you can kind of pick and choose and go through a list and see what kind of fits the foods that you like. All right, another question we have. I'm not happy with what my expected goal weight would be. How do I maximize this for loss? Okay, so kind of going back to that section that we discussed, let's see if I can go back in our slides. Might help kind of put this all together. Okay, so if you remember the medically determined goal weight, so this is just an average. Once again, a lot of people will lose much more than this, and some will lose less than this. This is just kind of what we medically sort of determine as an area for you to kind of think about, or what we would expect for you to lose before surgery or after surgery. Now, if you are really not happy with what that goal weight may be, the way you can really maximize this is, focus on, once again, eating healthy, looking internally at yourself, try to think about the habits that you have now, what has kept you from being successful with a diet before, and really trying to kind of focus on changing some of those behaviors. I have a lot of people that really struggle with, emotional eating or kind of stress eating. And that's something that doesn't usually go away with surgery. It kind of, there's that honeymoon phase after surgery where it does go away, but the further you get from surgery, a lot of those behaviors kind of tend to come back in one way or another, or they sort of manifest into a slightly different behavior. So the more that you can focus on those things and trying to change those behaviors and really look at, why you do certain things, that can help to set yourself up for good success in the future. Also, taking time to really, plan your meals. We all have busy lives, and there's different times in our lives where we have, more time to plan and less time to plan. And so kind of preparing yourself for those times when you may be too busy to make a nice big healthy salad every night of the week, but having things in your home that are good quick meals that you can make in a hurry that are healthy. And once again, you might find yourself really, making, changes to what your goal weight is. I've had more patients than not think that their goal weight is one thing, and as they get close to that weight, they realize that they don't really want to reach it because they feel like it's too thin, or it's not something that they can do forever. So just kind of, remember to be open to changing what your goals may be. Another thing to do to, make sure that you do hit that weight loss, or to really maximize your health, is making sure that you find enough time to be active. A lot of people have to get creative with this. I have a lot of patients that, especially a lot of men and women that are in some kind of sales position, or they travel for work. And so they have to find themselves, doing workouts in their hotel room, or maybe listening to a podcast and walking around, the parking lot to get some exercise in, or to walk for 15 or 20 minutes before they, come in and finish up their work for the evening. So just because you can't get to a gym for an hour a day doesn't mean you can't do some kind of physical activity. All right. Let's see. Are there any apps that you recommend instead of a food journal? This is good. Yeah, a lot of people don't want to keep a food journal. You're using your smartphone so much that it's a lot easier to keep everything contained on your smartphone, and that's fine. There are some different apps that you can look into. A few that I like, and it really kind of depends on if you have like an Android or an iPhone. I have an iPhone, but really you can use any kind of app that you like. But one that I typically recommend is called My Plate Calorie Tracker. There's also My Diet Tracker is another one. Mindful Eating Tracker is one. And you know what? I will make a list of some of these different apps and post it on the Facebook page. That way you can just go into the app section of your phone and type them in and see what you can find. There are a bunch that are free. I'll probably try to post the free ones over the ones that you have to pay for. If you're like me, you don't really want to spend a lot of money on some of these things. But I'll try to give you kind of a mix of ones that are free and ones that you do pay for, so you can pick and choose and see what you like. You can read different reviews. Once again, it's hard with a food journal because everyone kind of tends to make it their own. So you may get one app and realize that you like a different one more. So, but I'll post that in the next couple of days here, so you can look and see what you find that you like. All right, looks like we have one more question. It says, my family is not 100% on board with making healthier changes at home. How do I eat healthy but still give everybody the food that they want? This is a good question to end on, and a very difficult one at that. I think it's really important to sit down with whoever's in your household or whoever's around you frequently to really try to get the best support that you can, having an open and frank conversation about the changes that you have to make, the changes that you want to make to be healthier, and what you need from them to really help you make those changes. And obesity is an issue that it typically doesn't just affect one person in the family. It's usually spread out between generations and spouses. And so if you have to make these changes, there's probably at least one other person in your house that needs to as well. And so kind of having a healthy, honest talk about this is really important, I think. And that can be kind of awkward for people, but I think it really does help. And the other part of this too is, if you're finding that even after you have that conversation that it's difficult to get your family and maybe your friends on board, you just living a healthier life and making healthier choices usually helps others to make those choices as well. I found this in my own household that there are a lot of foods that I really liked or healthier foods that I wanted to have that my husband didn't like. And so, I would just make them, and Brussels sprouts is one example of that. I would make them, and I think he probably got tortured on Brussels sprouts as a child and never wanted to have them in the home, but I would just make them for myself, and I would make them the way I like them. And after a while, once he saw me eat some of these foods, or saw me have, oatmeal on a regular basis or a good healthy yogurt, when people are exposed to things and they see other people enjoying it, they're more likely to try it as time goes on. So it might take a few months, but typically as people see you being happier with the food choices that you're making and living a healthier life, that tends to kind of get other people on board. Another thing you can do is, if there's foods in the house that aren't that healthy, so if it's, Friday night pizza night at your house, instead of just ordering one big pizza, maybe make a nice big side salad as well. And so, the pizza's on the table, but that salad is also exposed to everyone. This is something that I'll do with my children, is that I'll serve them a vegetable on the table first before maybe I have the rest of the meal ready. Because when they're hungry, they're more likely to eat whatever's available as opposed to just kind of the food that they may want. So that's a trick that we've used in our house. We almost always serve a salad first or some kind of, carrots and vegetable dip to get some of those healthier foods in while you are hungry. All right, these are good questions. I will see if we can post them to the site here in the next few days with the responses to help people out. All right, with that, I think we will end our webinar for today. Once again, let me go to our last page so you can see the link to the Facebook group if you'd like to join that, and also the bookmark knowledge base section of the MexicoBariatricServices.com website. All right, thanks everyone, and